Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome to this presentation. And today I'm going to be talking about the notion that genetics load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. You may have heard this phrase before. It's going around, quite popular at the moment. Certainly not my phrase, but it's very, very relevant for today's presentation. So basically, we're going to look at the notion of the fact that our day-to-day choices influence what's going on inside our bodies and brains. And it's almost like we can choose the outcome of a lot of the things that happen to us. We're talking about DNA. Basically, your DNA is not your destiny. Now, it might seem that the genetic lottery that we've all been in might determine the cards in your deck, but it's certainly not the case. But the way you're living your life deals the hand you're actually playing. And what this means is you can actually change the outcome of your life. And this is all down to something you may have heard called epigenetics. Now, epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. I'm going to break that down and explain exactly what that means to you. So lifestyle choices won't modify the structure of DNA, but they do have the ability to modify the way your DNA works. Where you live, who you interact with, how you exercise, which medications you take, what you eat causes changes inside the body that in turn switch your genes on and off. This can occur once in a lifetime or continuously over time, thereby influencing your chances of retaining or not retaining optimal physical and cognitive health and fitness. And literally, you actually have the power to activate or silence your genes, which is nice to know. So genetic variability is the result of thousands of years of continuous genetic mutations. Mutation is a permanent change in our DNA. Now, when we think of mutations, we kind of think of something going bad. When you something's mutated, you always think, oh, that doesn't sound great. But it's not necessarily, it could be good, it could be bad. But it's really a permanent change in our DNA. And to use an example, about 9,000 years ago, all humans actually had brown eyes. Every single person had brown eyes. And you can imagine something happened in the DNA of the human being where it started producing people with blue eyes, which would have been quite strange to all the people on the planet back then. We don't actually know what happened, but this is what the scientists have said from their research, that we didn't start to get blue eyes until about 9,000 years ago. And that's what we call a mutation. But there's a handful of genetic mutations that can make us sick. But there's a myriad of genetic variants that simply make us different. And eye color, height, weight, body fat distribution, muscle mass, all the millions of things that we have in our genetic makeup that make us different. You know, skin color, hair color, all these different things. But there's a certain amount of genetic mutations that can make us sick. Now, whether we choose to allow that to happen to us, it's not entirely in our control, but the things that we do in our environment, how we live, the nutrition, what we are into in our environment can certainly influence that. And that's what epigenetics is do you switch on these genes, or do these genes lay dormant, this DNA? So look, there we've got Naomi, Campbell and Marcus Schenkenberg, two supermodels from back in the 90s. Now, I put these up because they're obviously, you know, from the genetic lottery, they've got a better set of hands, better set of cards than most people. And I always remember back in the 90s, Marcus Schenkenberg, I think he was German. He was had this ridiculous body. He's about 6'2", lean, long hair. It was just like, oh God, how does he look like that? And obviously, Naomi, you all know her. She's obviously probably a lot more famous than Marcus. But yeah, these guys, they just, they won the lottery when it comes to genes. Of course, in more recent times, we've got David Gandy there on the left, and I couldn't actually find the name of that supermodel. And this was the advert they did for D&G. They famously shot he He's in a rowing boat with these bevy of beauties. I think it was shot off the island of Capri in Italy. But some people are just blessed with, great looks, great body, and there's nothing we can do with that. But what we're talking about is how we can influence all the other things in life. Obviously, that's just one small part of the genetic lottery, but not that important when it comes down to it. I mean, in this fickle world, we all want people that look good and they get favored, but we're talking about, health, nutrition, mindset, all these different things. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, he's known as the father of epigenetics, one of the researchers that has kind of brought this scientific field to the forefront. He states, and I'm going to read this. This is exactly his quote. This is not mine. Epigenetics doesn't change the genetic code. It changes how it's read. Perfectly normal genes can result in cancer or death. Vice versa, in the right environment, mutant genes won't be expressed. So I'm just going to pause that there and come back to his quote. What that means is they've shown that most of us have cancerous cells in our body. Nearly all, I think, I could be wrong, I'm not sure. I think nearly all of us have the ability for things to go horribly wrong. So it really depends on whether you decide to switch them on. Like, given a classic example, if that's true, if we've all got cancerous cells in our body, if you smoke, drink heavily, have a poor lifestyle, sleep badly, and you get cancer, you kind of pay your money, you take your chances, So it depends what you do in life is whether these genes get switched on. Okay. Genes are equivalent to blueprints. Epigenetics is the contractor. They change the assembly and the structure. Talking about cancer there. So new research may now indicate that cancer is only 10% hereditary and 90% influenced by environment and its triggers. And on that note, if we go back 100 years ago, the cancers that are around today, I think you can get cancer of nearly every body part. They just didn't exist. 10%, only 10%. So 1 in 10 is hereditary. And when you get someone, you get like a 4 or 5 year old child that gets leukemia or cancer, that's just extremely unlucky. Maybe they want it, 1 in 10. But for the rest of us, it's largely developed from the things that we do to our body. It doesn't exist 100 years ago. So it's down to our environment, the food that we eat, and a few other things that we're going to talk about. So let's look at the 3 primary ways to control gene expression. First of all, emotions. We're going to look at the psychological and the physical aspects of that. Environmental factors, which is a massive one when it comes to things like degenerative diseases and cancers and everything, and also stress management. So first of all, emotions physiologically, but also physically. And in the example of love, when you're in love with someone, you're going to produce massive amounts of the feel-good hormones, dopamine and oxytocin. Obviously, this is a nice feeling. When you're in love, you tend to be happy. You've got a very skewed look on the world because everything's sweet and smelling of roses. You're releasing lots of these feel-good hormones, and life just feels good when you're in love. The flip side of that, the opposite of that, when someone's scared or they're living in fear, which a lot of people are all the time, this will release a very different set of chemicals, mainly the stress hormones and inflammatory agents like cortisol, adrenaline to a certain extent, other hormones that, which could signal the cells to stop growing. So how you feel has got a massive influence to the the genes or the DNA in your body. Are you a very stressful person, lots of negative emotions, that could be causing a lot of disease. That's what the studies are showing. Environmental, this is the big one. I'm very passionate would be the wrong sort of phrase to use, but it's something that's top of mind when it comes to my environment. But I'm big on having the right products in the house, and home and surrounding environment makes a significant impact on our genetic expression. Things down to the air we breathe, the water that we drink, certainly the food, and things most people would probably be aware of: food, water, and the air that we breathe. but maybe you're not aware that things like household products, skincares, deodorants, makeup, cleaning products you've got under the sink, washing up liquid, all of these have small amounts of or large amounts of chemicals, but a small amount of toxic load. And it all goes to this toxic burden, this load that we're under. And if you take it back just 70 years ago, a lot of these chemicals were actually invented and man-made in the 50s and 60s, mostly from America. They just didn't exist before that, which is why 9 out of 10 people succumb to some type of degenerative disease. So the environmental is huge. It really is. If you live in the city, let's use London example, or any major massive city, the pollution just from cars and factories is a big problem. You know, every household has cleaning products. Every person uses deodorant, shampoos, washing up liquid, all these different things. So environmental can play a huge role. So just something to be aware of. And stress. Now, there was a study by Dr. Dean Ornish. He studied prostate cancer patients. And they had two groups. The first group, conventional cancer treatment. And the second group was just lifestyle modification, no treatment. So they just used stress reduction techniques and none of the normal conventional treatments they would use in cancer patients. And the results, 90 days later, so 3 months, over 500 genes that influence prostate cancer developed had been altered. It's very, very powerful. So what are the action steps? We know that that largely your environment, it can affect whether you switch these genes on. That's what epigenetics is suggesting. So what are the action steps? What can we take to help us? Well, first of all, let's look at the emotions. And this is a big one. It just sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's absolutely true. And this kind of tie into self-limiting beliefs that I've talked about, and that feedback loop, that negative self-image we've talked about with people trying to lose weight. Very often you hear people say, well, heart disease runs in my family, so I'm going to get heart disease. And it's almost like you're telling yourself, your subconscious, that, switch those genes on because mum and dad got heart disease, so I'm probably going to get it. That's not true. If we know that these things, certainly cancer, is only 10% genetic, maybe all these other things are only 10% genetic. Maybe some of these diseases or afflictions that people get are less than 10%. So just because genetics or in your family they've succumbed to a certain disease, it doesn't mean you're going to get that. My parents have high cholesterol, so, and you can fill in the blank. And you get this, I often hear this with clients, we're big boned. Always, obesity runs in the family. Mum and dad are big. No, the reason why someone is obese and their parents are obese is probably because they've been overfed as a child. It's got nothing to do with genetics, not often to do with genetics. So instead of using this energy negatively, tell ourselves we're destined to get sick, why not channel this energy into creating positive and healthy intentions? So it's almost like saying, well, yeah, okay, parents, grandparents had diabetes or heart disease, but the choices that I make in my life, they're going to determine whether I get that heart disease. Now, you don't just get heart disease. If you smoke, drink heavily, poor lifestyle, maybe you're in a polluted area, lots of toxins, environment, all these different things, very stressed. That's what causes heart disease. That's what causes high cholesterol. That's what causes a myriad of other things. That's what causes cancer. It's lifestyle, what you choose to put in your body, physically in terms of eating, water, and also mentally, the choices that you make. Genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. So we cannot change the hand that we've been given, the hand that we've been dealt in terms of genetics. That's just, you've got to choose better parents next time round. So rather than believing that, how about living life in spite of it, or just in spite of what the genetics I've been given, that I've been blessed with or not been blessed with, as the case may be. I'm going to live my life the healthiest way that I can in terms of nutrition. I want to talk about nutrition It's what the things that you eat and also take into your mind. Toxins in environment and food. Top priority, water we drink. Now, tap water, we're very, very lucky. If you're in the UK, the Western world, very, very lucky we've got water that we can drink. However, should we drink it? Probably not. Probably not. Best to get the best quality water you get, which might not even mean bottled. Reverse osmosis, or get a filter on the mains if you can, because the water that we drink in the tap, it's been cleansed loads and loads of times. Small amounts of chemicals are all there. So be very, very careful with the water you drink. How we cook and store food. Endocrine disruptor from things like Tupperware and also cling film that we all use in the kitchen to store food. They've got to be very, very safe in terms of the plastics, because the plastic will leach into the food, and very, very small amounts, admittedly, but over time that can cause problems. They've known these endocrine disruptors been known to cause many cancers. And I mentioned the household beauty hygiene products. So always aim for non-toxic if you can. The downside is the non-toxic variety just don't work as well. I've got a friend who has got a non-toxic deodorant, and he always laughs because he stinks. He said, "This bloody deodorant just doesn't work." He's putting loads on. He still smells, but at least he's not getting chemicals into his arms. So yeah, the non-toxic stuff doesn't tend to be as good. I guess you've got to weigh up whether you want to add that into the toxic load that we're already exposed to, or go the non-toxic way. And from a mindset perspective, stress reduction, here's a few relaxation techniques. Yoga, of course, we all know about. Meditation, breathing, deep breathing is one that I've been looking at recently. And Wim Hof, if you've seen my previous presentations, check out Wim Hof. He's a crazy Dutch guy. He's not that crazy, but he appears to be crazy because he does these wild action. I can't even think, lost the phrase there, but he just submerges himself in ice, cold showers, cold baths, and the benefits of that can be fantastic. But his breathing technique, Wim Hof, is excellent at stress reduction. Cold thermogenesis, I've mentioned that, cold baths, ice showers, and stress management on all levels. And there's so many different ways that we can reduce stress, but that's a big factor when it comes to switching on or making these genes that we've got lie dormant. I'm going to finish with this. Don't fall into the trap of believing your genes control your future and your health. They don't. They really don't. Don't buy into that. Don't buy that bullshit story. Take control. Make the necessary mental, emotional, diet, and lifestyle changes. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed that presentation. That's it for now. And I will see you on the next video.